Let's understand the scope and the importance of what's going on, because DOGE wants access, right, to get into the systems, and they were granted that by the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. And so they're in there looking at where every single dime is going. You know, they're turning the money off for one Letitia James. She's flipping out. She's saying they don't have the right to go in there and see all our personal data. And now the judge saying, well, you know what, I'm not going to get in the way of this. And this is an Obama appointed judge. So that's kind of a big deal. Yes, it may go all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, as you just heard that gentleman explain, really not liking the idea that one district court judge anywhere can kind of get in the way of what's happening on a federal level. So again, this is coming down to like federal versus state. And I'm going to just tell you, hey, Tishy, baby, you know what? Federal wins that all day long, because there is this little thing called the supremacy clause, which we can get into. But first, Jonathan Turley, who's just a brilliant legal scholar from American University, appearing earlier on Fox and talking about the complexity of this, which, by the way, isn't that complex, okay?
Where do you think this all goes next? I mean, this seems to be the moment for DOGE. How will it go legally?
Well, I love the fact that one of these arguments occurred on President's Day. It's a sort of reminder that we actually do have a president. There's someone who is in charge of the executive branch. And you have states and judges, that is a few, that have seemed to have forgotten that. But you're now beginning to see judges come to a more sober realization. I've been mystified by many of these challenges. In my view, the president has this authority. They can see these records. It's a bizarre type of argument, Sandra. It's sort of the Bernie Madoff approach to government efficiency. You can go ahead and reform, but don't look at the books. I mean, they obviously need to look at the receipts. They need to look at where the money has gone in order to make these judgments, and they seem to be finding a great deal of waste. And I think that judges that aggressively try to prevent that are likely to be reversed. And Sandra, I think that when they got Judge Chutkan, who is viewed as not exactly supportive of President Trump, they thought this would be a slam dunk. But even Judge Chutkan, they said, look, I don't understand, where's my authority here, and where's the imminent harm?
It's incredibly telling the way the judge responded here. Here's the words of the judge on the lawsuit from the 14 states, Jonathan, challenging Elon Musk and DOGE, saying, quote, the building will be demolished and there will be something that can't be undone. The things that I'm hearing are serious and troubling indeed, but you're saying these are things that we're hearing. I'm not seeing it so far, Jonathan.
Right. What she is seeing, and what we're all seeing, is what a president does when they come into office. Now, it's true that President Trump is being more aggressive. Most people run for this office about shrinking government and then forget once they become the government. That's not the case here. I mean, he went and got someone who is famous for downsizing. He did that at X. And they are proceeding along those lines. What's curious about the protest of many of these members is that a lot of these voices were the same ones in the name of democracy that wanted to prevent voters from being able to vote for Donald Trump, who ultimately won both houses and a majority of votes. And now in the name of democracy, they're arguing that they should be able to slow down or stymie or even prevent some of the things that he ran on. Well, he's carrying out those campaign pledges. He wants to shrink government. Mm-hmm. He wants to find fraud. And to do that, he needs to look at the books. And I just find any real effort to prevent that likely to be reversed on appeal.
I mean, wow. Right? This is, they're saying it's a constitutional crisis. I'm just going to say, no, it's not a constitutional crisis. You know why? Because this woman, and you're going to have to turn up her sound a little bit. I apologize for that. I'm going to tell you in advance. This woman is so freaking wrong. Okay? She's just wrong. She has no ability to say boo, because she is flying in the face of federal law. So, bzz, okay, Tishy, enough.
Payments to the state of New York and to states all across this nation. It is unacceptable, unconstitutional, ultra-vires. They have exceeded their authority. And so it's important that attorneys general representing our respective states stand up and enforce the rule of law, because Elon Musk, individuals at the Treasury, and the President of these United States is not above the law. And we will continue. As attorneys general, we've been We've been preparing for this. This is not the outcome that we wanted.
Yeah, you've been preparing for this. How many times have we heard this? Oh, we've been preparing for this. We're ready to respond.
With other Democratic AGs across this country to make sure that we would be ready to respond to any attempt to roll back our rights. So here we are. We've studied their platforms. We've identified certain possibilities, fact patterns.
And you knew they were going to take your money. And by the way, if you were a better lawyer, I don't know what Harvard law degree is worth these days, but if you were a better lawyer, Tishy, you know what? You would have understood that you didn't have a prayer because, you see, you are violating the law. And if there's one scope, there's one area that the federal government is so firmly able to handle and manage and do, and that would be the border. Okay, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4. Yes. You see, the federal government is in charge of the border. And in case you had any doubt, in case, some of these states wanted to go rogue and do funny things, guess what? There is a supremacy clause in the Constitution which provides that the laws of the United States shall be the supreme law in the land. Anything in the Constitution or the laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Congressional intent is paramount in preemption analysis. Accordingly, a court must determine whether Congress explicitly or implicitly intended to preempt state or local action. But in this particular case, you have Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4. Go use the Commerce Clause. Heck, if you want to, right? Because the Commerce Clause also gives U.S. Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among several states and with the Indian tribes. And the simple clause has arguably provided the federal government with as much power as all the other powers in the Constitution combined. The beauty, by the way, the beauty of the Supremacy Clause, and I wrote this in a book that I wrote years ago, so I'm literally reading my own words. I said, is that Congress has attempted to justify almost every law imaginable by simply saying it has direct or indirect effect on the economy. And believe me, immigration has direct or indirect effect on the economy. So you take your pick, Tishy baby. Everywhere you look, the feds have the power over the states when it comes to migration, when it comes to people being in the country illegally. And when you're standing in the way, as you so are, of the feds being able to do their jobs, guess what? I'm kind of wondering if you're going to be the ones in cuffs. I mean, Tom Homan's talking about arresting one AOC. Are you next? New York Attorney James, New York has laws that protect immigrants and limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement efforts. Those laws should be followed by law enforcement and officials in our state. I'll always uphold our laws. But the thing is, lady, you can't unless you want to go to prison yourself, because you're now in total violation of the actual laws of the land. You can't actually do this. It's why when AOC is out there saying, I'm going to tell people to do this, that, and the other, and giving various webinars on how to avoid the federal government, you got Tom Homan going on Fox saying he's talking to Pam Bondi and he's thinking about actually having her arrested.
Anymore. But Tom, you got AOC out there, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman, putting out a webinar, doing a webinar to help illegals avoid, I guess, apprehension, giving tips about how to continue to remain in the country and ultimately game the system.
And I sent an email today to the Deputy Attorney General. At what level is that impediment? Is that impediment? I'm not an attorney, I'm not a prosecutor. Is that impediment? Is that impeding our law enforcement efforts? If so, what are we going to do about it? Is she crossing the line? So I'm working with the Department of Justice and finding out where is that line that they cross. So maybe AOC is going to be in trouble now, but I need the AOG to opine on that. But because there's impediment is impediment, in my opinion. I'm not a prosecutor, but we need some further guidance on that. But again, if we have to take every federal dollar out of the city, we'll do it. I mean, we're done. This is...
Yeah. Okay, so the money's gone. And I love it because when you cut off the money, you actually really reduce all of their power that they think they artificially have. Okay, so Letitia, now your state's out of money. Well, that's not very good, right? Now you got all kinds of problems when they turn off the money spigot. And I don't think there's anyone that's going to stop them on this. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to impeach him? good luck on that. I think the Republicans are in favor of everything that's happening. So you can continue to get out there and complain and complain and complain. But the truth is, the power of the purse is pretty darn compelling. And the power of the Constitution is damn compelling. And now you get a situation where you guys are kind of out there floundering in the face, just actually trying to impede the law. And you're going to find yourself possibly in jail yourself. I mean, let's be honest about this. You are in total violation. And I think that Mike Davis highlighted this not too long ago when he was talking to.
Let me just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term. Because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights. And I promise you that. So think long and hard before you want to violate President Trump's constitutional rights or any other American's constitutional rights. It's not going to happen again.
We've been warning people on the show, Mike. This isn't the same.
Yeah. All right. So you're actually violating the rights of all the New Yorkers that live there and are entitled to have a safe existence. And Letitia, you're not the only one. Every sanctuary city, every sanctuary state all throughout the country now is hugely at risk of going straight down and getting their federal funds completely cut off. Okay? So you states are going to have to figure out a way to do things on your own because the spigot is not going to be open anymore. Absolutely, positively not. You guys blew it. You know what? You're so obsessed with just going after Trump. Letitia, in the old days, which wasn't that long ago, that was just pre-Trump, Democrats actually pretended like they wanted to have borders. And actually, let me go so far as to say, no, they weren't pretending. Actually, it was one Barack Obama who was very, very adamant about going after illegal migrants and saying, listen, you come here legally or you don't come here. I mean, we got rules surrounding this, right? Don't we have rules like asylum? If you actually want to come to this country, you apply for asylum. And then if you're granted asylum, you get to come here. In the U.S., asylum is defined under 8 U.S.C. 1158, aligns with the 1951 Refugee Convention and the 1967 Protocol. To qualify for asylum, guess what? Oh, two things. Not just one. You got to meet two criteria, okay? Persecution of a well-founded fear or a well-founded fear of persecution, okay? So you're afraid that the government is basically going to kill you or lock you up because of something that's going on. The individual must have suffered persecution or have a genuine and reasonable fear of future persecution. And then there's number 2, protected grounds. In other words, the persecution must be based on something like race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. Well, I'm sorry, but you're coming here for a better future and a better life because you know what? We still got the American dream going on, but that is not enough to actually qualify you for asylum. So what are they doing? What was Letitia doing? Well, they think that this is somehow going to be a constitutional crisis. I think it's actually not a crisis because of the supremacy clause, Article 1, Section 8, because of the Commerce Clause. But I'll tell you what I think they were trying to do. I think they were trying to buy votes in their own little way by having all these people come here and suddenly getting them into the voting system. New York moves to allow 800,000 non-citizens to vote in local elections. Remember that story? Yeah, New York City to become the largest municipality in the country to allow legal residents to vote if the legislation is approved as expected in December. I don't believe it's actually been approved. I believe it's been challenged. And guess what? Even if it's not, you know who's going to challenge it now? Donald Trump. Donald Trump and his entire Justice Department, Pam Bondi, they are going to challenge it because you are now putting the rest of the country entirely at risk. And we haven't even talked about what she did to Donald Trump and how she's putting the entire economy at risk with her antics, the insanity of going after somebody, saying, I'm going to get in the way, in between your private dealing with Deutsche Bank because I hate you. I hate you, and I don't want you to be the next president of the United States. Therefore, I'm going to go after you for something that no one's ever gone after anyone before. I mean, think about it. You know what? You want to say, get a secondary mortgage on your home. or a line of credit, equity line of credit on your home, and you write down what you think your home is worth, and you talk to your bank, and your bank says, well, okay, maybe we'll give you this loan. We're going to send somebody out, an appraiser, to figure out whether or not that home is really worth what you think it's worth. And if it appraises, then maybe you'll get that equity loan line of credit. Well, this is, it's a different way of saying exactly what Trump was doing. In other words, he was trying to borrow money to be able to build more buildings. And in order to do that, he had to go to the bank, which was Deutsche Bank, a German bank, and say, hey, can I do this? And they have New York officers, big presence, by the way, in the United States. And Deutsche Bank, very sophisticated group of people, looked at it and said, okay, yeah. And we'll use Mar-a-Lago as collateral because Mar-a-Lago is worth whatever they thought it was worth. Donald Trump thought it was worth a lot. You know who didn't think it was worth a lot? One Letitia James. And so then Letitia James basically went after him based entirely on that, which was really kind of sort of weird, right? So she goes after him, promising to put him in jail, not jail, forgive me, because this was a civil thing, bankrupt him. She wanted to bankrupt the former president because he did a deal that nobody lost money on. I mean, just think of how crazy and ridiculous.
Well, did you see what happened yesterday where they found hundreds of millions of dollars of money was fraudulently given to newspapers and I guess Politico?
That's Donald Trump talking about the press coverage of everything that happened with him and everything else for that matter, because the media was right there like lapping it up. As Letitia James was threatening to send him to jail, they were loving every single minute of it, right? Like she was a hero to people as she got out there. Here she is on ABC News, Disney-owned ABC News, saying she's going to seize all his assets. She wanted to take over Trump Tower.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
In the past week, Elon Musk and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency have accessed the personal private information.
Okay, let me get to that other part on Elon, but let's first just discuss here. Okay, seizing his assets. That was her goal because she wanted him to pay $500 million, nearly $500 million. And she said, oh, he doesn't have it hanging around. Well, we're going to go take over Trump Tower. And there was this whole thing about why doesn't he have it hanging around? Like anybody just, puts it under their mattress. I'm sorry, that's not how it works. I mean, mind-blowing. I have been especially disgusted by this entire ordeal, in part, I think, just because it offends my sensibility of sort of belief in our capitalist meritocracy that has made us the country we are. Because when you have people like Letitia James going out there trying to go after someone just because of who they are politically and coming up with these grand excuses to attack them for the success that they have had financially, that really tells you got a problem, right? I mean, you look at all of these companies moving out of New York City left and right, not just because of taxes, but because of the threat of the political environment. And so this is what keeps coming up. If you would, in the Court of Appeals, as they examine what Letitia had going down, I mean, I think about Judith Vale, who's arguing on behalf of Letitia, because that's how it works at the appellate court. You got to get someone a little bit smarter, a little less political to try and argue this thing. And the judges are like, listen, this sounds like a private case. Why was an attorney general bringing this forward, wasting taxpayer dollars? It's not like she was out there actually doing good things for the New York community. No, she was bogged down in this crapola.
It was using...
I'm sorry, but what's being described sounds an awful lot like a potential commercial dispute between private actors.
Well, to go back to the first question about whether there's other examples of this, there are other examples of this. In the First American case, the Attorney General brought a 6312 case where the transaction at issue was between a very big bank, Wells Fargo, and a professional appraisal firm.
But it wasn't wasn't the concern there that the public would ultimately be negatively impacted and affected by what those corporate actors were doing.
And that concern is here as well, because when you have hidden risks getting injected into the market, that hurts the market and honest participants in the market. And the legislature also decided, contrary to what defendants think, that making sure that business in New York stays honest is the way to attract and keep business
to that
in New
point,
York.
the Executive Law 6312, I just want to read a section of it.
Okay, so she was trying to insert herself in the middle of a private transaction in which no one lost any money. And she was doing this saying that somehow his Mar-a-Lago was worth only $18 million, despite the fact that it was making like $57 million a year. I mean, hey, Letitia, honey, I'd take that trade all day long. I'd go and buy Mar-a-Lago if it was $19 million. I'd buy it for 25 right now, okay? We'll figure it out. Listen, the place next door, like just the dirt, just listed for $200 million. We'll see what it goes for. But the idea that somehow Letitia James was out there trying to say that Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million, I mean, who the heck is she to decide? It was bonkers.
Right, you have a corrupt attorney general who literally ran on the campaign promise to taking down my father. She goes, I'm going to go after Donald. I'm going to take down his family. I'm going to go after his children. I'm going to get, her exact quote, I'm going to get to the office of attorney general every day. I'm going to sue Donald Trump, and then I'm going to go home. I mean, she fundraised off of this nonsense. Like, this was her entire platform going after after my father. Then obviously she gets into office and she does exactly that. And you've got a crooked court and everything else. But actually, I think we're making a breakthrough with the judge. I think they're trying to realize there are no victims. First of all, my father's statements are undervalued, not overvalued. Second of all, she's going after banks. She's trying to protect banks that made hundreds of millions of dollars with Trump, meaning there were no aggrieved party. There were no defaults. There were no
you guys made
loan
money.
covenants.
You guys made money. That's why
we'd borrow money.
Yeah.
Go do a great project. Be very successful.
Jobs and homes.
Pay a tremendous amount of interest, and then pay the banks back in full. Like, we never had so much as a default. No one. So what we're saying, they're saying, is there a victim in this? I mean, you're suing us and there's no victim, but Carla, it's nonsense. The DOJ has told Letitia James to make my father's life hell. To keep him tied up in a courtroom, to cost him tens and tens of millions of dollars, to distract him.
Yeah.
And that's what she did, but she didn't distract him enough, right? Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen, we have the 47th president of the United States being one Donald Trump. So it's like no matter what she did, all the lawfare that she inflicted on him, and it wasn't just Letitia, you got Fannie Willis down in Georgia. I mean, she had her own special screw-ups. Then you had Jack Smith in D.C., who, by the way, Trump is now like, why were you using $140,000 worth of legal advice in the last couple of weeks before you left off? I mean, is that a gift that you should have to pay taxes on? Mm-hmm. Jack Smith, he was rabid. You had, that guy, Bragg, right? Who just wanted to be able to get the felony conviction. They just wanted to be able to say convicted felon. This is messed up. This is really messed up. And now we're finding out, as I played for you earlier, it turns out, oh my gosh, the media was entirely on the payroll to the tune of $52 million for the Associated Press. 8% of the income at the BBC, I mean, it's international, right? Coming from none other than USAID. $8.2 million going to Politico Pro subscriptions at $10,000 a pop that nobody even used. What on earth? HHS sending $30 million to the New York Times? I mean, all in the New York Times between USAID, HHS, National Science. I mean, they were getting something like $50 million. And now it's like, okay, I get it. This is why. And this was all sort of starting to accumulate over the last 4 years. I mean, that's when you really started to see the uptick in the federal funding going for the media. And so there was an effort. There was an effort to take him down no matter what. And you know what? They lost. Okay, they lost. He is now the president of the United States of America. And guess what? He is not messing around. So Letitia, this means you're going to have some problems. It really does. I know you don't like Elon, but guess what? Elon just got a big win along with Trump. Here's Letitia flipping out. No one elected Elon Musk. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter. You know, he's the consultant who's coming in and he's looking at everything and he's going to decide just exactly to present to the president whether or not things are really worth it, because we had no idea that we were spending billions and billions and billions of dollars. We had no idea that we were spending, according to Caroline Leavitt and DOGE, $2.7 trillion. I mean, like, what is the debt? 36 trillion outstanding when you're spending 2.7 trillion going to overseas Medicare and Medicaid? What is that about? We need to know, okay? And Letitia, no one's on your side when you say this, and the judge just confirmed it.
No one elected Elon Musk and his minions, and no one has allowed him to have access to this information. This is a violation of the separation of powers. The United States Congress, the United States Senate, has the sole discretion in having the power of the purse, and not Elon Musk. We are here today to seek a preliminary injunction to stand up against those forces who believe that they can unilaterally have power and have control, all in the hands of the President of these United States.
Okay, well, so far, you're coming out on the losing end of that one. I mean, not just politically speaking in terms of where the people are, but actually in terms of the judge that just made the decision that she's not going to rule on this, that Elon Musk, DOGE, Donald Trump can continue looking through all the data and finding out whatever they can, which, by the way, can't happen quite soon enough.